Lawyers of Reddit, what is the most baddest I rest my case moment you ever witnessed? I was in an accident a few years ago. Other guy's fault. He got a ticket for unsafe left turn. And I got a ticket because I wasn't wearing my seatbelt. In the section on the ticket, the cop inadvertently wrote "did wear seatbelt while operating motor vehicle." When I got to court, the judge asked how I wanted to plead. I asked the judge if I could ask a question first, and he said sure. I stated the ticket says I did wear my seatbelt while operating motor vehicle, and if that's the case, I want to plead guilty. The judge looks down at the ticket and looks back at me and says case dismissed. Have a good day. I did. Just a short one. Denmark's constitution states that you are to be held before a judge within 24 hours of your arrest. No exceptions. Christmas Day, we bring a man before the judge, and the whole case took like 2 minutes from we entered the court. Prosecutor, Your Honor, the man before you has an entry ban from Denmark, yet here he is. I have no further allegations. Edit. I can see that some people are confused, so I'll take a minute to clear out some of it. I don't get it. The accused is not allowed to be in Denmark. The accused is sitting in a Danish courtroom, making it a very hard case for him to deny that he is, in fact, violating his entry ban. Why is it important that it's Christmas? It's implicit that none of us wanted to be in court for longer than absolute necessary, since we had better places to be. How do you get banned from Denmark? It helps if you're a non-EU citizen and commit a crime that gives more than 4 years in prison. I don't know what this man was banned for in particular. There's plenty of people getting banned, but it is a bit complicated, not just because of international laws, but because we don't really have hard borders. It's more of a speed bump. What if the 24-hour rule is broken? Time for a classic law term. It depends. If a Danish citizen does a petty crime, there's a possibility he's just sent home. We do that with drunks, fights, junkies, etc. You don't just let a foreigner go, because how would you ever find him again? I remember a case where one of our big international oil tankers was attacked by pirates outside the coast of Somalia. The pirates were caught and held captive on board for 12 days and taken to the police as soon as the ship was in harbor. All the pirates had to be paid a compensation because they were not held before a judge, called in via Skype, within 24 hours. I hope that helped clear out some of the confusion. I used to work in baby daddy court as a caseworker. This guy kept telling me, the mother of the child, anyone who would listen that the baby wasn't his. When they went before the judge confirmed through DNA testing that he wasn't the dad. Dude turned around and took off his jacket. His shirt said not the father. Edit. The guy kept telling me, the mother of the child, and anyone who would listen. My bad. Wasn't my case, but in criminal docket court one morning the accused wore a pair of very unique custom-made red cowboy boots, stolen from the house he was accused of robbing. Wore them to court to plead not guilty. The prosecutor was laughing. My wife and not me, and it was during sentencing. MR. Defendant, local gang boss. You stated you are not and have never been in a gang. That's correct. Do you have any tattoos? Yeah. I have a tiger on my calf and one on my chest that says GD for life. What does GD stand for? Gangster Disciples. But, I mean, comma, no further questions, Your Honor. Full stop. This may not apply, but there is a Judge Judy episode where a high school girl is suing 2 boys from her school for taking her backpack and stealing various valuables out of it, and something like the following conversation happened. Judge Judy, and what was taken from your backpack? Girl, my phone, my money, my headphones. Boy 1, no, they weren't. Judge Judy, excuse me? Boy 1, there weren't any headphones in the backpack. I'm not a lawyer, but a friend's sister went to court over a moving violation. She's an engine tuner and had built herself a beautiful first-gen Mitsubishi Eclipse with 6-700 horsepower at the wheels. This car, inevitably, attracted the attention of the local law enforcement, who pulled her over with no fewer than 8 cruisers after some slightly aggressive acceleration around a left turn. During cross-examination she asked the officer who'd made the call why exactly she had been pulled over. I heard the engine revving. and I saw you spinning the tires and sliding around the corner. To be clear, officer, which tires were spinning? The rear tires. So I was spinning the rear tires, and it was the back end that swung out? Yes, ma'am. That's correct. And you're sure that's what you saw? Clear as day. Ma'am, the light turned green. You stepped on the gas, and the rear tires broke loose under power. The rear tires broke loose under power? There's no doubt in your mind that's exactly what happened? None at all, Your Honor. This officer is either lying or hallucinating. My car is front wheel drive. Kind of applies, I'd suppose. I practice mostly criminal defense. Capital I, fairly recently. Had a client who, after pleading guilty to a theft charge, contested the amount of restitution owed. Essentially the client said, I stole some stuff but I didn't steal all of that stuff. The victim had to come to court to prove the value of the things he alleged were stolen. Some of those things, that my client denied having touched, much less stolen, were rare and valuable coins. To support his claim, he brought a statement purporting to be from a local coin dealer with the type of coin listed and its value. I knew nothing about coins, but I knew the judge knew a lot about coins, having collected them for years. The DA asks his questions. I muddle through my questions. Then the judge said he had some questions, and verbally ripped this guy's list to shreds. Stuff like, you expect me to believe that blah 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 coin in blah blah condition is worth $250 when I can go online right now and find the same coin for $36? I just sat back like Vincent LaGuardia Gambini while Mona Lisa Vito was being voir dired. It was wonderful to watch. Not a lawyer, but I read about this. Two guys were being tried for robbing a gas station. A customer who saw the robbery was now on the witness stand. The prosecutor asked him to describe what he saw. He said that he saw two guys robbing the store and then running out, and one of them bumped into him. Then the prosecutor looked at the two perps and said, are those two men in the courtroom today? At which point, the two idiots raised their hands. Case closed. Edit. Grammar. A little late, but this is one of my dad's favorite stories. So he is out of state on business driving through some no-name town when he goes through an intersection. Suddenly a cop pulls him over stating that he ran a stop sign and ticketed him. My dad insisted there was not any stop sign, but the cop did not listen. Pissed, he went back to the intersection and saw that there was a stop sign hidden behind a tree and twisted in the wrong direction. Even more pissed, he went to a convenience store that was in sight of the intersection and bought a disposable camera while the clerk laughed because he saw what happened and knew what's up. Luckily, my dad had to be back there in a few weeks for work. The cop assumed that someone with out-of-state plates would just pay the ticket, and they were shocked when my dad turned up in court, calmly presented his evidence to the judge and strolled out in 5 minutes scot-free. When I was in law school, I clerked for a criminal defense legal clinic. We had an assault and battery case where there was only one witness to the crime, which was the victim. I was sitting at the defense table with the actual attorney, another law student that worked on the case with me, and the defendant. We were all in similar looking suits as a matter of unplanned coincidence. The victim was asked to identify the person who committed the assault in court, and she pointed to me and not the defendant. Our attorney asked several times if she was really pointing to me and if she was sure, and she said yes. The prosecutor was visibly upset, and the trial pretty much ended there, as this was a bench trial and not with a jury. It was never discussed or admitted to, but I suspect our attorney purposefully had me there at the trial because I did have a passing resemblance of the defendant. Not a lawyer, but my father-in-law was subpoenaed to testify in a trial. Wasn't a big case. It was to do with a car and if it had or had not been written of and if there was fraud going on. Essentially, they had a form from the garage my Phil had been working at. He did all their paperwork, and they put him on the bench and asked some questions. Then they handed him a form which he had filled out for her work to be done after her accident. The lawyer asked him, "Phil, did you fill out this form?" Phil, "Yes." "L, and on the right where it says write off, car totaled, did you write that?" Phil, "No." "L, you are sure?" Phil, "Yes." "L, is it possible you wrote that and forgot?" Phil, "No." L, how do you know you didn't write that and simply don't remember? Phil, I always write in all caps like the majority of this form. That is not written in caps, so I know I didn't write it. I am told the lawyer's face dropped and the case was dismissed. My Phil said this after he was a bad lawyer. You never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to. One of my top posts ever is relevant here. For a while my mother dated a man who really liked to act like a big shot. He was a guy that claimed to know a guy wherever you went. Anytime you wanted something he would say, oh wait, let's go to $store name, I'll talk to $owner and get you a deal. Nearly every time he did, the owner seemed like he wasn't entirely sure who this guy was. He would do it like insist on taking the whole family on a vacation, or take everyone to a fancy restaurant, or he would show up with expensive gifts out of the blue. It like new electronics or guitars. Eventually the relationship ends. But not long after we find out he's taking us to court because we owe him money. Court date comes. He presents his case first. He goes through a huge itemized list of every item he ever bought us. Every single item. From a vending machine Coke to a new sink because he broke the old one. Even a birthday cake bought for the youngest child. Once he's done, the judge asks if there was an agreement to be paid back for any of that. He says it was just an understanding. The judge asks specifically if he ever said he wanted to be paid back. He says no. That usually when someone buys you something you pay them back. The judge then explained that no. In fact that's not usually how gifts work. And that by his own admission there was never an expectation to pay for anything. So after his own testimony, the case was closed. He then appealed. Again he presented his testimony first. Again. Closed by his own words. Was on a jury. Defendant attempted to rob a tip jar from a barista, and the barista fought back. He ran, and she tossed the empty jar towards him. Defendant claims that he was hit on the head and injured by the metal tip jar. Even though we'd already watched the video, and I already caught this detail, the prosecutor asked to play the video of the robbery again, and then she says how could the barista had hit him in the front of the head when she was throwing it from behind, and he's wearing a hat. She was so annoyed she had to point that out. I almost laughed. Not a lawyer, but I once got stopped by a cop for a fix-it ticket. Basically, you have to fix a broken tail light and get a cop to sign the ticket, or pay the fine. That night, my car was totaled by a drunk driver who ran off the road and hit it at high speed. Can't fix a tail light if you don't have the car anymore. So I wound up going in on my court date to contest the ticket. Say sorry, I couldn't get the light fixed and don't think I should have to pay. The judge gives me this look like what's your excuse? Then I hand over the police report papers and briefly explain about the wreck. I didn't have to pay. Obligatory, I'm not a lawyer, but this happened to my wife in small claims court. Background: we lived in a small coastal town in the mid 1990s. She was attending the local community college, which was located on a steep hill. The main road ascending the hill had most of the side streets barricaded for some reason. One day as she was driving up the hill to classes, she happened to be behind an older man in a small truck. The man attempted to turn onto a side street, but found it barricaded, so he put the truck in reverse and backed into my wife. My wife said the man was apologetic as they exchanged information, and gave her his phone number so they could work out how he would pay for the damage. When we called the number he gave, his wife answered and began to berate my wife, telling her that it was her fault and that we were going to have to pay. No way. Small claims court is the answer. Our day in court arrived and things looked pretty bad for us since it was our word against his, and rear end accidents are usually considered to be the trailing driver's fault. Before making his ruling, however, the judge decided to skim the paperwork one last time. A slight chuckle emitted from the judge and he asked the man if he remembered filling out the accident report. Yes, Your Honor. Then you probably remember stating on the accident form that you put your truck into reverse, backing into the car behind you. You've incriminated yourself and lied to the court. I'm awarding the full amount. Case closed. Consider yourself lucky I'm not charging you with contempt. The wife and I high-fived in the hall outside the courtroom. During my divorce, my ex was on the stand lying her ass off about how she was totally not using drugs and having an affair with our underage child present in the home. Her lover was outside because my attorney subpoenaed him and he had to be there. My attorney grilled him and what he said contradicted what my ex was saying at least a dozen times. Then my attorney put her back on the stand and made her admit every single lie she told the judge. Her closing argument was basically that mom is a liar and has zero credibility. I was awarded primary custody of our child, the house, child support, and her druggy boyfriend is not allowed within 500 yards of the child. That was pretty badass. Not so much a rest my case moment, but a memorable one. There was a deposition of a witness and a room full of attorneys. Witness is asked if he knows or has spoken with any of the atties in the room before the deposition. Witness responds he knows Atty X because sometimes they go to the same parties and snort coke together. Needless to say, Atty X had an immediate meltdown. A good transcript to keep. A friend told me this story. He's not a lawyer but was job shadowing or something and was in court for the day. Anyway, one of the cases was a girl contesting a stop sign violation. The prosecutor asked how long she was stopped at the stop sign and the girl responds 40-50 seconds. The prosecutor asks her to look at the clock in the courtroom and proceeds to stay silent for the next 30 seconds, which is a really long time. Once the 30 seconds is up, the prosecutor looks back at her and says, "Were you really stopped 40-50 seconds?" And the girl was basically silent. I'm pretty sure she was found guilty. I have two. One my own, and one someone else's. In mine, a client was accused of not leaving this woman alone when she wanted no contact with him. He swore that they were dating, and she'd call the police when she got mad. She swore she wanted nothing to do with him. She had a photo on her phone of him sitting on her porch to prove that he'd come around without her consent. I asked permission from the judge to look at the photos before and after to get context. Lo and behold, she had hundreds of photos of him eating dinner with her, sitting on her couch, wearing her undergarments. It was glorious. In the other, a colleague was questioning a police officer about a consensual encounter with the defendant. Officer claimed that he in no way intimidated the client, and that the client was free to walk away at any point. My colleague said, "Officer, you think based on what you said and how you acted that any person in this room under those circumstances would feel like they could walk away?" The officer said yes, and the full courtroom audience started laughing. Not a lawyer, but a witness. I was called to testify in an assault case when I was a high school teenager. I had witnessed an altercation between two kids where one had been sucker punched by another, resulting in a broken orbital bone. I was asked to testify whether the kid who was assaulted instigated the fight in any way. I stated that the attack was basically unprovoked as a group of us had just been hanging out on school grounds catching up when the attack occurred. After I testified, the lawyer for the defense got up and asked a few questions. L. What were you doing hanging out on school grounds during the summer? Me. We were hanging around catching up with friends from my town because I hadn't seen a lot of them over the last several months. L. Why is that? Me. I've been away from home in insert neighboring state for school the last 9 months. L. Is that some kind of detention facility? Me. No. It's a college preparatory seminary. I'm studying to be a priest. L. No further questions. Not a lawyer, but I used to work in the court system as a caseworker. If it was a contempt charge, I had to explain to the client that he or she had the right to an attorney and could request a continuance until he or she could meet with the attorney. One guy I was talking to waived his right to an attorney, but I'd noticed he reeked of liquor. I asked him if he'd been drinking and he said no. I asked him again if he wanted a continuance, because I knew the last thing he needed was to go before a judge in his state. He said no, that he wanted to get it over with. This is his conversation with the judge. Guy, judge. I have nothing to hide from you. Judge, sir, you smell of alcohol. Have you been drinking? Guy, no ma'am. I work at a bar, so I may have spilled something on myself. J, sir, I'll ask you again. Have you been drinking? G, well judge, I won't lie to you. I had a couple of Mickeys earlier this morning. J, sir, it's 8 AM. How long ago did you drink? G, about 6 AM. I just got off work. Mum, I won't lie to you. I had about 2 shots. J, sir, you have shown up intoxicated in my courtroom and nothing you say in your defense will be inadmissible in your car. G, okay. I won't lie to you. I had about 4 or 5 shots. J. This is bullet. Lock him in the tank for contempt of court. 3 days for each time he didn't lie to me. The guy stared at me when he was being arrested. I just shrugged my shoulders. Not a lawyer, but just had a case where a guy embezzled then sued us. He had done it by moving money to his company and calling it intercompany loans. His expert witness, who was a CPA, was asked about their one document they had produced. And she said, as you can see, this document shows that embezzling plaintiff owes your company $650 K. We had no questions and rested right there. He should probably have gotten his CPA on the same page with him. Fraud trial. Prosecution QC gets right to the point pretty much. Third question into defendant. So you accrued $45,000 a year. Have no properties. No other source of income. No inheritance, and as far as I'm aware have not won the lottery yet. You have foreign bank accounts with Ox Million and a Ferrari. It must simply be a coincidence that defrauded entity has an accounting black hole pretty much equal to those riches. The defendant pretty much gave up at that point. I was once railroaded by some cops on a totally fabricated possession charge. Someone I was with had a joint in his pocket. For me and a friend, they literally emptied an ibuprofen bottle from my car into an evidence bag while laughing, telling me how I'm ducked now. I am seriously not making this it up. I saw how the scam works when, after a nightmare in custody, both of my friends took violations and paid $200 for the privilege of a night in central booking. I was having none of it. I worked from home so could make this my hobby for the rest of the year. Bring it to trial, I said. Let's see the state spend an estimated $10K to try and convict me. Back in court weeks later, the judge glanced over the files and saw there was none of the supposed drugs in evidence. The prosecution shuffled through a bunch of papers and asked for a stay. The judge then proceeded to dress down this lawyer in the most hilarious way, also telling him he was wasting my time. The court's time. This whole thing was plainly ridiculous. And the next time I was in court would likely be dragging them there on a civil case. Clearly I had wandered into a pretty fractious relationship between these two. She dismissed the case and apologized for wasting my time. I don't think I or my lawyer had said more than one yes, Your Honor. After a truly horrific and traumatizing experience, this made me feel marginally better about the state of our justice system. I watched a judge question a person in small claims court about a variety of things having to do with paperwork, guarantees, warranties, photos, etc., and the lack thereof to support the claim. At the end he proceeded to rant on this guy for a full 5 minutes on how he, plaintiff, had wasted everyone's time, one by one ticking off the failures, and then told him he, plaintiff, had better hope he never appears in this courtroom again or be held in contempt. The entire room was spellbound. It was better than any TV show. Not me, but a buddy who is a DUI attorney. In the state he practiced in, being in the car with the keys in the ignition, even if the engine isn't running, is considered a DUI if you're intoxicated. Had a client come in, told his story to my buddy. The buddy goes to the DA after discovery and says, don't take this to trial. DA says, yeah, right. In court, he gets the state trooper who made the arrest up on the stand, and the trooper says under oath, I saw with my own 2 eyes that the keys were in the ignition. Buddy gives the cop several tries to walk it back, then has it read into the record that the car was a Prius. Boom. Instant dismissal, and the state he got into some trouble. As a clerk in the district attorney's office a few years ago, there was a battery case where the victim, addict wandering the streets likely picking fights, got into an altercation and had his hand chopped off by the defendant's machete. The day the victim came in to testify, the clerk asked him to raise his hand and swear to tell the whole truth, etc. And when he raised the handless nub, every single juror gasped for air, and we knew a conviction was on the way. I got a violation put against my name for land I didn't own. It was the land next to mine owned by the city. I took pictures of how the violation was posted on the city's land, how the city's land was in violation of grass height laws, its orientation to my land, how the violation did not have my lot's number but the city lot's number, and brought the posted violation to court with me. Got up to the stand. explained myself and presented my pictures. The inspector who wrote the violation stood and called me by a name that wasn't mine, then showed pictures of a busted up car with a bunch of weeds on it I had never seen before. The judge raised her eyebrow and asked what address this was. He said an address that was across town from mine. I say that I also do not own that land. She removes the fines. Case dismissed. My mum was a personal injury solicitor, and she was basically trying to prove that the car that hit her client and caused life-changing injuries, brain damage, belonged to X. X at first pretends not to live where he does. Then the car is found abandoned or wiped down. The trail seems to end. Then, my mum has a hunch and checks X's Facebook. He had a public profile, and his profile picture was his standing next to the car in question. She screenshots them and sends them to the opposing counsel with a slightly more politely worded "OSI, our client's a dumb duck." She's retired now, but she considers it to be one of the most satisfying moments of her career. Needless to say, she won the case and her client got a £1 million settlement and is now living in Spain. All for the want of a simple privacy setting and a touch of common sense. Many years ago, my best friend was a defendant in a case and asked me to attend a one-night stand from a little over a year prior to the event. Sued him out of the blue for child support. The first hearing in IVD court was to either force him to sign an acknowledgement of paternity or to legally compel him to complete a DNA test establishing paternity. The woman was being represented by some not-for-profit who sent a very aggressive attorney. The attorney acted like she was running the show from the start, and ended her opening statement by telling the judge that this was a standard deadbeat dad case with a scowl in my buddy's direction. His opening statement was as follows, paraphrasing due to imperfect memory. "Good afternoon, Your Honor. I have brought a copy of text messages exchanged between the plaintiff and myself 11 months before the child was born, which I believe establishes that our single encounter could not have resulted in this pregnancy. Additionally, I have brought medical documentation of my vasectomy along with documentation of follow-up tests confirming that the procedure was successful." There was an immediate sound of whispering among the audience in the courtroom, almost entirely comprised of people waiting their turn in court, and one guy in the back laughed. The bailiff brought the paperwork to the judge. The aggressive attorney interrupted while the judge was looking over the paperwork, which pissed her off. The judge briefly told off the attorney, then dismissed the case. I once got out of a noise violation ticket. I was driving around and had my music in my car up. Cop pulls me over, gives me a ticket for the noise violation. It wasn't even that loud, you couldn't really hear it from outside the vehicle, but my windows were down. So, go to court about it. My defense was, if the ice cream man can drive around blaring that creepy music, I can listen to my radio. Judge tried to keep a straight face, but I got out of the ticket. I kind of have the opposite of this. I had court last Tuesday as we were evicting our horrible tenants. I prepared for weeks. I compiled hundreds of papers showing that they were perpetually late, that we always fixed any issues in a timely manner, that they got super pissed when we told them we weren't renewing their lease, etc. I copied every message we had ever sent to each other, made bullet points and numbered them for the judge to see. I typed what I wanted to say, and practiced it. I was ready to be a lawyer and defend anything they may have said against me. When it was our turn, the judge asked me exactly one question: have the tenants paid the rent? I said no. And that was it. All of my preparation for nothing. Look for my answer under this. It's kinda funny.